First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello everyone, this is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler, live streaming here from the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom, as we are every weekday. We start at 1 o'clock and we go throughout the afternoon. We cover a wide range of topics. America's 250th birthday has been something we have definitely talked about here and across the station. And in honor of that, we wanted to talk about something very big that is happening on March 18th, and that is Minoru Yasui Day here in Portland. And the event we're talking about is taking place in Portland at the Oregon Historical Society. And this is in honor of that man, and to find out more about him and to learn about the history and who he was and what he still stands for, what his legacy means, we spoke to Barbara Yasui, his niece. And there's a lot that's said in this. This is a long interview, but it really does have a lot of information about his history and about, again, as I mentioned, that impact that he has had and the legacy still holds. So let's jump into it.
Okay. My name is Barbara Yasui, and I am the niece of Minoru Yasui, the man who we will be honoring with the program on Saturday. And Min Yasui, who was my uncle, was the third of 9 children of Masuo and Shizuyo Yasui, who were immigrants from Japan. And they came to the U.S. in the early 1900s, and Min, as we called him, was the third of 9 children that they eventually had. They settled in Hood River, Oregon. Min was an honor student all through his school years in Hood River, and he eventually went to University of Oregon and was, I believe, the first Japanese American to graduate from the University of Oregon Law School. And at that point, he tried to get a job he passed the bar in Oregon and tried to get a job as an attorney, but because of impending wartime and the climate at that time towards Japan and people of Japanese ancestry, he wasn't able to find a job in Oregon. And so he eventually found a job working for the Japanese consulate in Chicago and moved to Chicago for that job. When Pearl Harbor happened in 1941, December 1941. Oh, I should also mention that he was an officer in the ROTC at University of Oregon and had been commissioned, I believe, as a first lieutenant. So when Pearl Harbor happened, he immediately resigned his post in Chicago and came home and said, "Okay, I'm ready to serve my country." But he was rejected, as were many other Japanese Americans, because again, there was a lot of anti-Japanese sentiment in the country at that time. So he wasn't able to join the military as he wanted to do. Then, shortly after Pearl Harbor, well, first of all, I want to say that my grandfather, who was an immigrant to the U.S., was first-generation immigrant, and he was prevented by law from becoming a citizen. But 5 days after Pearl Harbor, he was picked up by the FBI and taken away from his family and put in a separate Department of Justice detention camp for Japanese immigrants. And he was incarcerated apart from his family from December 1941 until January of 1946, so well after the war was over. So this was happening to Min's father, my father's father as well. So then on February 19th, 1942, President Franklin Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, which authorized the removal of all Japanese Americans on the West Coast and all of California by the Army, by the U.S. military. So at that time, Min had returned to Portland and was working as an attorney and his own private practice. He decided to just start his own shop because he couldn't get a job with any law firm. And he immediately realized that this executive order was unconstitutional, especially for people like him who were American citizens. In other words, he said, the Constitution does not allow for the roundup of American citizens just based on their ancestry. And so he was determined to test this case, do a test case of this. And so he tried to find Japanese Americans who would be willing to do the test case, and was unsuccessful because, of course, there was a lot of fear and confusion in the Japanese community at that time, and people were afraid to speak up. They just wanted to sort of be under the radar at that time. So no one would do the test case. So my Uncle Min decided, well, if nobody else is going to do it, I guess I have to do it. So on March 28, 1942, he left his law office in Portland in the evening and walked around the streets of downtown Portland. Now, at the time, there was a curfew law that applied only to Japanese Americans, who said that people of Japanese ancestry could not be out on the street after 8 o'clock at night. And so Min took his citizenship, his birth certificate, and the curfew order and walked up and down the streets of Portland trying to get arrested, essentially. And he even went up to a police officer and said, hey, I'm Japanese American and it's after 8 o'clock, so I'm violating the curfew law. And he showed him his birth certificate and the curfew law, and the policeman said, Sonny, you're just going to get in trouble. Go home. And so he refused to arrest my uncle. And so eventually my uncle got tired of walking around. And so he went to the police station in Portland and essentially went up to the front desk and talked to the person there and said, okay, you need to arrest me because I'm Japanese American. I'm violating this curfew order. So the officer at the desk obliged him and put him into what my uncle calls the drunk tank for the weekend. So unfortunately, he did this on a Friday night. And so he had to stay in jail over the weekend. But that's how his test case came about. Eventually, he had a hearing, and he was temporarily released from jail and sent to the Minidoka incarceration camp in Twin Falls, Idaho, along with many other people of Japanese ancestry in Portland. And so he was there, and then eventually he had a trial, and he lost because the judge essentially said, well, one problem is that you were working for the Japanese consulate in Chicago, so you were working for the enemy, more or less, and so that was one problem, and therefore you have lost your citizenship. So this, because you did that, you've lost your citizenship. So we can, it's okay for us to arrest you and put you in jail. And so he was then put in solitary confinement in the Multnomah County Jail for, I believe, 18 months. And this is, a small cell, no windows, it's solitary confinement. He's all by himself. And so he endured that for over a year, and eventually his case went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and he lost. And there were three other cases that tested either the curfew or the incarceration itself. And so his case was one. Gordon Hirabayashi in Seattle was another. Fred Korematsu in San Francisco was another. And the third one was a woman named Mitsue Endo. The three men all lost their cases. Mitsue Endo ultimately won her case, which led to the release of people of Japanese ancestry after the war was over in 1945. But my uncle, paid a high price for testing the constitutionality of the curfew. And so he went on to he moved ultimately to Denver, Colorado, started a law practice became very active in the civil rights movement in Denver, and was the first, I'm not sure I have the title exactly right, but the first director of the Human Rights Commission for the city of Denver. So all his life, he fought for civil liberties, for civil rights, for social justice. And then he ultimately, his case was reopened along with the cases of Gordon Hirabayashi and Fred Korematsu. And because there was research done that said that evidence that showed that the government had no justification for doing this was found and was not presented during their trials, even though the evidence was available. So they asked for what was called the writ of coram nobis to overturn these three cases. So they tried to get the cases overturned. None of them were, my uncle's case was not overturned because he died in 1986. So the court said, well, it's moot because he's died. And ultimately, Fred Korematsu's case was not completely taken off the books until just recently by the Roberts Supreme Court. So all this time, these decisions that the Supreme Court made about the incarceration of Japanese Americans were still technically on the books. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say no, and they probably still would be without all of this effort to bring that to light and to to let people know about this.
Yeah. And so then in 2015, my uncle had died in 86, but in 2015, his attorney at that time, whose name is Peggy Nagai, and my cousin, Holly Yasui, decided that they wanted to try to get the Presidential Medal of Freedom for my uncle posthumously. And so they put together a committee called the Minoru Yasui Tribute Project to collect testimony documents to present to the White House, essentially saying, please nominate this person for this medal. And they were successful for 2000. So in 2015, President Barack Obama awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom to my uncle posthumously. And my uncle was the first Oregonian ever to win a Presidential Medal of Freedom. I think that's still true, that there still hasn't been anybody else. And so in 2016, then Governor Kate Brown signed, I don't know if it was a bill, signed something that essentially said every March 28th forever in perpetuity will be designated in Oregon as Minoru Yasui Day. So that has led to this annual program in his honor on or about March 28th every year. And this year it's happening tomorrow, Saturday, at the Oregon Historical Society from 1 to 3 p.m.
Man, I mean, what an incredible life, and just how much he served, for everybody, in bringing all of those cases to light, in standing up for other people, and all of that. I mean, just an amazing life. And when it comes to this day, for people to come down there to the Oregon Historical Society who want to celebrate this day and honor Minoru, what is it that they can expect, at the event, and what can they expect during this?
So the event, as I said, is being held at the Oregon Historical Society, and it's also being co-sponsored by the Japanese American Museum of Oregon, who both of these organizations have really been keepers of Japanese American history in Oregon. And the program is going to, there will be, first of all, my Min's granddaughter, Chani Hawkins, will be the master of ceremony for this program. And she's going to talk a little bit about the history of the day, Min Yasui Day, as will Peggy Naga, his attorney, will be speaking. And then there will be there was a student art contest for middle and high school students to create art that reflects, the prompt was something like the rule of law, how can we ensure that the rule of law is followed today? That's not exactly the title, but something like that. So there's a student art contest, and the winners of that contest will be revealed at the program. And then there will be a panel who will, again, talk about, so the sort of big idea of the day is, the theme is, what would Min do if he were alive today? So the students get to express that in art, and then there will be a panel discussion on more or less the same topic. And the panelists are going to be, so the moderator is going to be Tristan Lyon, who is a professor, I feel like at Southern Oregon College. I may not have that exactly right. Eliza Canty-Jones, who is the editor of the Oregon Historical Quarterly. Kevin Hatfield, who is a faculty member at University of Oregon. Erica Naito Campbell is an author. Frank So is the executive director of the Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon.
Okay.
And so they will speak, and then there will be a poet who will recite a short poem. His name is Kurt Ikeda, and he's the director for programs for the Go for Broke National Education Center.
So
and then
go ahead.
The formal program will end, and then people who come to the program will be invited to view the exhibit that is at Oregon Historical Society right now. It's called The Yasui Family, An American Story. And it essentially tells the story of my family through artifacts, photos, and documents that were collected by the family. Most of the artifacts came from the contents of the Yasui Brothers store, which was in Hood River from the early 1900s until World War II started, that were the family was forced to leave the store behind when they were sent to concentration camps. And so the store was boarded up, but all the contents of that store were kept safe. And so were donated to the Oregon Historical Society in 1991. And then there was a subsequent donation in 2022. So all of those artifacts, documents, photos were used to create this exhibit. So people who come to the program will be able to use this exhibit.
And view that and get that idea of some of that life and the story of your family and Minoru, and just, fully encapsulate and understand why it's so important for everyone to know that story. And it's the 10th anniversary, I believe, right, of Minoru Yasui Day, as we talked about there at the beginning.
Yes.
And something that will go on, as you mentioned, in perpetuity, but a great opportunity to go and celebrate that this weekend. And anything else that you think is important for people to know?
Well, I just want to say that the exhibit is about the Yasui family, but really it's the story of many other Japanese American and other immigrant families. And I think at this time in our history, the other thing to note is that this year's also the 250th anniversary of our country. Mm-hmm. And of the Declaration of Independence. And yet we are seeing a tremendous backlash, I think, advocated by our government and the current administration, that are vilifying immigrants and are downplaying their contributions to our society. So I think it's not just about the Yasui family, but it's about the bigger story of immigration, of who gets to be called an American, about whose civil liberties are upheld. And so I think that it's really important not only to celebrate Min Yasui Day, but also to remember that it's up to us now, who are living in this time and place in our country to do what my Uncle Min would do, and that is to speak up, to act, to do something to make sure that our democracy is preserved.
Well, Barb, I want to say thank you very much for joining us, to talk about this and share this history, and everyone can go down there and understand that a little bit more. And as you mentioned, it's bigger than just Min Yasui, because it's the work that he did and all of that. Not only just celebrating himself, or celebrating his life, but understanding what that meant. And
Yes.
what that could mean for everyone. So I want to say thank you very much for joining us here on Fox 12 Now. I really appreciate your time, and looking forward to this event on Saturday.
Okay, thank you.
All right, really an amazing story. And again, that's March 28th on Saturday from 1 to 3 at the Oregon Historical Society, but it sounds like some events outside of that as well, all for celebrating Minoru Yasui Day. And thank you for joining us. This is Fox 12 Now. We live stream here out of the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom, as I mentioned at the beginning, every weekday starting from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., and we cover a wide range of topics, and we get to have sometimes very long-form discussions like we just had there with Barbara. So thanks for joining us. We're going to go ahead and sign off for right now. We'll talk to you soon. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.